From Newzroom Afrika Studios in Johannesburg, welcome to this year's first episode of This Week in Politics. My name is Vuyo Mvoko. Thank you for joining us. Now, by all accounts, 2026 promises to be a very interesting, if not exciting, year in politics. And on the show today, we look at some of the issues and people that will shape it all. Where else to start than with a look at the leading political party in South Africa, the African National Congress, which this week kicked off the political calendar year with its traditional January 8th celebrations. Now 114 years old, what does the future hold for the continent's oldest liberation movement? Now, coming as its birthday celebrations did this week, on the back of a historic electoral loss in the 2024 national and provincial elections, and will the coming local government elections finish its obituary? The obituary, that is, of the country's still most popular party. And if the ANC's decline continues as predicted, which of the main political players are poised to take advantage and rise to the occasion? And what will take them to get to that top? While the political parties will be having a go at each other during this year's electioneering, the country will still have to run smoothly. The question is whether the parties serving in the executive arm of the Government of National Unity will simultaneously be able to cut through the noise and also put the country first, grow the economy, help create jobs, deal with poverty and inequality, while confronting head-on all the other ills like rampant crime and corruption.
Order, honorable members. I can see you didn't have enough time to greet each other. Order.
The role of the legislative arm of the state in all of this? Will it be caught in petty political electioneering squabbles instead of holding the executive accountable and focusing on Parliament's core responsibilities, such as the work of the ad hoc committee that's looking into allegations of SAPS corruption? The third arm of the state, on the other hand, the judiciary, that is, also has its work cut out for it this year.
Nothing weighs more heavily with the judiciary than when it is not able to carry out its mandate effectively, and its core mandate is delivering judgments expeditiously.
Outstanding rulings like the one on President Ramaphosa's Phala case, which has been with the Constitutional Court for more than a year, could just end up being the political football that Chief Justice Mandisa Maya and the rest of the judiciary wouldn't want to play in. Admitting to challenges is, of course, one thing, but doing something about it is quite another. The entire criminal justice system will be on trial at both the Madlanga Commission and Parliament's ad hoc committee, whose public hearings and subsequent reports will no doubt preoccupy us for a significant part of this year. Our eyes will also be on this man, appointed this week as the new National Director of Public Prosecutions. Can Andy Motibi succeed where Shamila Batoyi failed? All that and more in this year's first edition of This Week in Politics. We begin here. The country's leading political party, the ANC, kicked off the year this week the usual way, celebrating the oldest liberation movement's 114th birthday. Coming as the celebrations did on the back of the party's historic loss during the 2024 national and provincial elections, it was no ordinary celebration. And in a year in which it will be fighting for its life in the upcoming local government elections, so much is at stake for the ANC.
Akuna mkhatlo lo le mong o sekileng wa etsa tiro e entsweng ke ANC. And gona le mokgatlo o le mong o re reng ha re o sheba be re bona o kare o tla kgona go etsa mosebetsi o entsweng ke ANC. I say it without any measure of doubt. I do not see on the South African political landscape any organization that has the principles, that has the policies, that has the broad existence and support that the ANC has. Ha re sheba ko pele, re batla gore ANC e sebeletse setšhaba ka nnete. Ka Satertaga, re tla ba re le kwa ko moruleng. National Executive Committee ya ANC e tla ba e ntsha molaetsa wa gore selemo se a na re tlo sebetsa bjang. E tla ba e re fa ditaelo gore re le ma ANC naga e re isa ko kae. So re tla ba re ntsha ba re ke January 8th statement, re tla ba re se bala ka Satertaga. Bao ba tla kgonang go ba teng re batla gore le be teng, empa bao ba sa kgoneng le shebe mo TV le mamele mo radio. Re tla ba re tlhagisa sentle gore a na problemi e ya gore batho ba bantsi gagolo ba bantšha a ba sebetse re tlo e etsa bjang.
Not everyone is convinced, though. After Ramaphosa's birthday celebration speech, I spoke to two of the country's leading political analysts, Professor Beki Mngomezulu and Asanda Nwasheng. I began by asking them what and when did things start going wrong with the former liberation movement. Here are some of their abridged answers.
Unfortunately, the initial legacy of the ANC was one of a liberation movement for Black people, by Black people, staffed by some of the most intelligent people in South Africa who at the time had even studied internationally. Now we have a political party that whose brand has become about corruption, has become about ineptitude and lack of service delivery, which is really sad when you consider the beautiful, amazing, and really powerful legacy that it has when you look at its history all the way from 114 years ago.
As Asanda was saying, the ANC is the opposite of what we have known it for. That is an organization that was pro-poor, pro-Black, and a progressive movement. Right now, we have an organization which is led by people who are self-centered, basically characterized by egocentrism, and of course, not thinking about the same people who have placed them in those offices. So it's an opposite of the ANC that we have known all along. If anything, the ANC should be ashamed of itself, even when the president talks about the likes of Moses Kotane and the like. He should be ashamed of himself and should be ashamed of the leadership of the ANC for having basically undone everything that was put in place by the forebears of the organization who put people first, the point that Asanda just mentioned. So it's a disgrace, it's a shame, it's an embarrassment.
The problem started happening in post-apartheid South Africa, where the ANC was captured by capital effectively and became the very capitalists that they despised and began to be part of the fabric of extractive capital and extractive practices in South Africa. I mean, we talk about South African mining right now, and we talk about an industry that has had some transformation, but this transformation has not led to more royalties. It has not led to more state, more state control or even more state capacity, because of it is now Black people owning these things and no longer white people as it was in the past. As South Africans, we believed, we hoped, we thought that when the ANC took over, that they would change the fortunes of this country and that the minerals of this country, whether you're talking gold or platinum or any of the other newly critical minerals, would be to the benefit of South Africa. And that has not been the case. Instead, what they have done is they have ensured that even those who do pay taxes, those who do contribute, and the royalties that do come, that they corruptly take them out themselves. When we talk about some of the biggest challenges facing South Africa right now, the ANC is in the middle of it. Illegal mining. The first mine that was illegally captured used to belong to ANC-related people. And then that was Aurora. And when we talk about, the capture of the police, ANC people at the helm we're being told that they were receiving, 500K in bags. We're being told that ANC leaders were receiving Louis Vuitton bags. We're being told that, they effectively were the ones who were at the forefront of any and every extractive, illegal, and corrupt practice that was to the detriment of South Africa, which is the opposite of what they have been placed, to do. And if you look at the era, particularly between Jacob Zuma and Cyril Ramaphosa, is the most horrendous era. So it's not to say that during the Mandela era and the Thabo Mbeki era, there wasn't corruption. There was corruption, but it's grown quite exponentially, particularly under the Jacob Zuma era, where we saw the Zondo Commission told us there were numerous attempts at state capture, some successful and some not as successful as those who wanted them to be.
One point that we need to reiterate, which Asanda just referred to, during the liberation struggle, we were hopeful that once the ANC ceased to be liberation movement and became the governing party, it will have the interests of the people at heart. This was never to be. Ask yourself the question, how did people suddenly become rich when they were in exile and came back having nothing? Suddenly they had mansions. Where did they get the money from? That is where the first problem started. And then, of course, we'll ask who funded them and for what purpose. We'll recall that until 1993, the ANC still believed in socialism and still believed that there was no space for the institution of traditional leadership, and still believed that women would not be accorded the same status as men. Until there was a meeting that happened outside Pretoria in 1993, that's where those issues were revisited. Then the ANC realized that following the fall of communism in Russia in 1989-1990, then there was no room for socialism in a capitalist world. So they changed that policy, which is why even some of the so-called socialists are in fact more capitalist than you and I. That is the reality we are faced with. And then secondly, that is also the reason why the chapter on traditional leadership is the shortest one in the Constitution. In case you didn't check it, you can check after this interview. It is the shortest chapter because it was an afterthought. After realizing that if you did not bring the traditional leaders on board, you stood a risk of losing the first election in 1994. Then we had to embrace traditional leaders and then, of course, accord them the status which was ill-defined. Then in terms of people amassing power, the word or the phrase was, it's our time to eat. And that is exactly what is happening. Whites ate under apartheid, now it's our turn to eat. Unfortunately, when whites were eating, you would give them 10 rand to provide services, they would only eat 2 rand and then ensure that 8 rand is used to the communities. Right now, the opposite is true. They eat anything between 8 rand and 9 rand, and if you are lucky, 1 rand will go to the communities. And this has become worse in each and every election, as Asanda correctly pointed out. That is the reality we are faced with, unfortunately, and it's not going to get any better.
Still a leader by far, the ANC will be up against hundreds of registered political parties and individuals that will be campaigning in 2026, having secured a mere 40% in the 2024 elections, losing its majority for the first time. The ANC is no doubt is going to be on the back foot. The party's top brass, though, is adamant they will bounce back. But can they?
The first thing then will be humility, and then the second one will be to agree that things have gone wrong, and then thirdly would be to list a couple of things that the party has identified as stumbling blocks, and then lastly indicate how we are going to act on it. I had advised them, by the way, before the 2024 general election and said there were 5 things they needed to do, failing which they were not going to get 50%. As they say, the rest is history, because I was described as a Zuma man just because I was being critical, and then they labeled me as a Zuma man. And then look at what happened. They got 40%, at least according to official results. Others are questioning even the 40%.
I think the ANC is a dead political party. And if I was a leader of the ANC, I would be spending the next 5 years, or at least the years up until 2029, preparing to kind of create a narrative around the legacy. I would be wrapping things up and ensuring that whoever is going to come into power is going to at least have an understanding of the solid base and foundation where the ANC did good, compared to just, pretending as if they are not dying and pretending as if things are not running away from them. And but the unfortunate matter of it is that the ANC is so arrogant, they won't do that. And that is sad for me, because despite everything we've said here, the ANC did lead South Africa from apartheid into democracy, and did lead for a good 15 to 20 years, and did take this country to heights that we never imagined we could get to. But somewhere along the line, they lost it, and because of that, they lost the people, and those people are not going to come back. As I've said, if I'm getting sick because of water, if my relatives are getting sick because of water, and we now have to pay for water, there's no way any of us are going to be voting for a political party that's going to make sure that that continues, and make sure that the people who made that happen are, unpunished in any way. So it's dead.
Welcome back. You're watching This Week in Politics with me, Vuyo Mvoko. Also speaking at an event to celebrate the ANC's birthday this past week, the party's Secretary General, Fikile Mbalula, urged supporters to be like Kaizer Chiefs Football Club fans, asking them to keep on keeping on despite untold losses. But can that really be expected of the country's unemployed, specifically? Almost 32%. The country's unemployment rate is a ticking time bomb. 42% if one looks at the expanded definition that includes those who have given up looking for work. Now, any rate one uses is enough to repel a lot of voters, especially young people, for whom unemployment stands at that staggering 58.5% you're seeing on your screen. Ramaphosa insists, though, that the party still has the interests of the unemployed at heart. The president kept on saying this past week that the problem of unemployment in the country is giving him sleepless nights. That's how much he said he cared about it. But pronouncements by some of the ANC's most senior leaders don't suggest that they are having any sleepless nights. This week, national public broadcaster, the SABC, asked ANC National Chairperson, Gwede Mantashe, about the government's delivery record on unemployment, among other things. Mantashe asked the unemployed to stop, quote unquote, basking in the sun and start applying for jobs he claimed the ANC government has created, rhetorically asking whether, having given the unemployed the rod, the government must now catch fish for them. The backlash from the comments was incredible. Not even his own comrades were impressed.
Sometimes, President, when they speak like they are in dining rooms with their families. On a high level of unemployment in South Africa, you find leaders of the ANC saying that people are unemployed because they are lazy to apply for jobs. Those are people who are detached from realities and the people of South Africa. How to say the youth of this country and mothers here every day, who are giving their kids money every day to go and apply for jobs. One man who has not retired stands up and says, who has never written a CV in his whole life, says that the youth is unemployed because they are lazy to apply for jobs. You are saying majority of South Africans are lazy. That is irresponsible. And because they retire,
well, the ANC's own internal contradictions may just be what its opponents will need in this election year. The Democratic Alliance has long fashioned itself as the inheritors of the ANC's mantle. But cracks have begun to show among its own leaders too. Unhappy with the ANC's treatment of partners within the Government of National Unity, a group led by Federal Chairperson Helen Zille wanted out of the coalition arrangement, only to be defeated by party leader John Steenhuisen and his faction, who wanted to keep the blue lights and all the perks of being ministers and deputy ministers. The party is going to an elective Congress in April, where knives will be out for Steenhuisen and where the party's future or fate could be sealed. New kid on the block, the MK party has also made no secret of making true of their leader's wish and intention to upstage the ANC, the party Jacob Zuma once led. Battle lines have been drawn after the party convinced the National Freedom Party to pull out of KwaZulu-Natal's government of provincial unity and desert the IFP, the DA, and the ANC coalition.
The political allies of the ANC, IFP and DA have demonstrated a reckless willingness to ban this province to preserve power and privilege, with no regard for the future of next generation. It is particularly disturbing that the Democratic Alliance, despite exposing corruption of the ANC, has chosen to sacrifice morality and ethical principle at the altar of political expediency, hereby entangling itself in the very corruption it claimed to oppose.
The NFP says it will not work with people that fail to honor their words.
We are not going to be a pushover organization. If those who feel they need us with GPU, they must go back to our agreements, because we did have agreements, and they failed to honor them. Now that they are pushed on the back wall, they cannot now come over and say, "Naku, we want to be a principle-based organization." If you start lying from the onset, you will continue to lie and undermine us for the next 5 years.
The National Freedom Party has confirmed also that it has suspended the membership of KZN Social Development MEC Mbali Shinga. This after Shinga voted against the party during a recent motion of no confidence against KZN Premier Thami Nduli. The NFP further asked her to resign from her position. She, however, has still not done so.
Ms. Mbali Shinga has been suspended. Her membership status has been suspended for 3 months, pending the finalization of her disciplinary inquiry. I think you have seen, because I do not know who leaks that letter of suspending her, but I know that you know what I'm talking about.
Of course, what the NFP's stance may mean is that it could go, in fact, in all likelihood, it is going to go with the MK party, which means that the province of KwaZulu-Natal, the legislature at least, is going to be a hung one. But it will or may just give power to the MK party, which, as things stand following the 2024 elections, is the biggest party in the province. So the people of KwaZulu-Natal may have to brace themselves for what may happen this year. But Zuma may be the NFP's new favorite, but he's no doubt reviled by his former home. The Gauteng ANC this week didn't feature him in a birthday video celebrating the presidents who led the organization in the past 114 years. Pundits believe Zuma may also be digging his own grave after firing many people and incentivizing others to resign from his two-year-old party, including party president John Hlophe. After the break, while the political parties will be taking pot shots at each other while electioneering, who will ensure that the country still has to run smoothly? We look at whether the executive arm of the Government of National Unity will simultaneously be able to cut through the noise and still put the country first. And what will be the role of the legislative arm of the state in all of this? What are the chances it could be caught in petty political and electioneering squabbles instead of holding the executive accountable and focusing on Parliament's core responsibilities? You're watching This Week in Politics. Welcome back. You're watching This Week in Politics. This past Wednesday, Parliament's committee looking into allegations of criminal infiltration and political interference in the criminal justice system met. It was the first parliamentary committee to meet this year as the national legislature prepares for another big year. After a dramatic couple of months during its hearings last year, the committee now wants to shift their focus from police and prosecutors to the bench. Some of the lawmakers want judges to appear to answer allegations of impropriety within the judiciary. Newzroom Afrika's Zoleka Kodashe monitored the proceedings.
We've got a problem in the judiciary in this country, and it's a fact.
When allegations of misconduct are made against a judge, the Judicial Service Commission Act is triggered and sets out mechanisms for investigating the conduct of the judicial officer. However, Parliament's ad hoc committee wants a separate process for accountability.
We need to have them here. It's not only about the police. We have judgment which leaves much to be desired. They are not law unto themselves. If we say there's a constitution, whether we differ, some of us, we differ anyway with the constitution we have. That is the best in the world. It's debatable. But we can't have only the police here. When criminals are being allowed to run amok, white-collar crimes, by the same judiciary we are talking about.
But the JSC Act stipulates that a complaint against a judge must be dismissed if it is solely related to the merits of a judgment. But when KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi accused the judiciary of corruption, he raised concerns over the bail condition imposed on crime intelligence head Dumisani Khumalo. Mkhwanazi alleged that Magistrate Vusi Mahlangu ordered that Khumalo refrain from entering any crime intelligence premises. Since making the allegations of the capture of the criminal justice system, Mkhwanazi has not yet named a judge in the corruption claims.
Put the name of a judge. Stop shouting. Put the name of a judge. Stop being a coward. Tell us which judge did the wrong thing.
Honorable Malem.
Tell us which judge did anything. Tell us about the judge. I'm going to respond. If the member thinks
you can respond now when you think you are superior than all of us, respond.
No,
tell us the name of a judge.
This member, you must stop.
Meanwhile, lawmakers also rejected the proposal by forensic investigator Paul O'Sullivan and controversial Northwest businessman Brown Mokhodzi to appear before the fact-finding body virtually, citing security concerns, among others.
I think sufficient time has been given to Mr. O'Sullivan to present himself before the committee. We would want that we consider and utilize any avenues that Parliament has to compel him to appear before this committee. We are not going to do online hearings. If Mr. Paul O'Sullivan, as this indictment that was sent to us shows, is able to impersonate an IPID member and do all sorts of things, there's absolutely no reason why he can't come before a Parliament of the people to answer for himself. So we reject any consideration of an online hearing for him. We don't think that the reasons provided are adequate given the gravity of the allegations that has been brought against him.
The inquisitorial body has until the 20th of February this year to conclude its work. For Newzroom Afrika on Channel 405, I'm Zoleka Kodashe in Johannesburg.
While one arm of the state, the national legislature, figures how to deal with another arm of the state, the judiciary itself will continue to face its own pressures this year. Delays at the Constitutional Court, politically charged election disputes, and a nearly 20-year-long corruption trial are among the things that will keep the judiciary under scrutiny this year, especially ahead of the local government elections. Among the criticisms is the Constitutional Court's silence on the Phala Phala matter more than a year after the matter was argued.
The wheels of justice grind slowly as South Africa's courts face ongoing challenges, and the new election year is expected to put the judiciary under even more scrutiny. The Constitutional Court is no exception. It's been 14 months since the court heard the EFF's application to review Parliament's decision not to adopt the independent panel report led by retired Chief Justice Sandile Ngcobo. The report found that President Cyril Ramaphosa had a prima facie case to answer after over $500,000 were found hidden in his Phala Phala farm couches in Limpopo.
Nothing weighs more heavily with the judiciary than when it is not able to carry out its mandate effectively, and its core mandate is delivering judgments expeditiously. So all efforts are being made to deliver judgments expeditiously. The fact that judgments are delivered late does not mean that judges are not working. They are working hard. But because of all these other issues I mentioned cause the delays, there are only so many hours in a day. There are only so many judges to do the job. And I can go on and on. But that is not an excuse. We should be in a position to get work out as soon as is reasonably demanded.
According to the judicial norms and standards, judges have 3 months after the date of the last hearing in which to deliver judgment, but the shortage of judges and ever-increasing caseload have proven to add additional hurdles to the already often complex matters that judicial officers have to deal with. Despite this, the Constitutional Court exceeded the target on the percentage of finalized Constitutional Court cases by achieving 71% during the 2024-25 reporting period.
For the Constitutional Court, for example, if you just look at the numbers alone, the rate of cases that they were able to finalize in the 2024-2025 financial year is over 100 more than the previous year. And so it does seem that they are, putting in the work in terms of clearing the cases, but there are structural problems at the Constitutional Court, including just the mere fact of that there are only 11 justices.
The Constitutional Court, which ought to provide direction to the country's courts, has earned the criticism of many.
I have a problem with the Constitutional Court and the way it handles the Phala Phala matter. But it is not all of the judiciary. It's the Constitutional Court, and they are not above the Constitution. They are a product of the Constitution. They are a subject of the Constitution themselves.
As the country's eyes remain fixed on the apex court, The spotlight may also shift to the Electoral Court, which is this year expected to hear an application by the Umkhonto weSizwe party seeking to nullify the results of the 2024 polls. And as the official opposition charges ahead with that matter, the National Prosecuting Authority sets its eyes on ensuring that its leader, former President Jacob Zuma, and French arms company Thales finally stand in the corruption trial before the High Court in Pietermaritzburg.
The historical pattern that's been going for 18 years will simply continue. Your Lordship will refuse them leave to appeal in this application to stop the prosecution. They will apply for leave to appeal to the SCA tomorrow. If that application is refused, they will apply for a reconsideration in the SCA. If that is refused, they will apply for leave to appeal to the Constitutional Court. If that is refused, then the history shows us there'll be another interim application.
But is it in the interests of justice for a matter to continue despite pending appeals? The country will find out when the Superior Court delivers its judgment on the 23rd of this month. For Newzroom Afrika on Channel 405, I'm Zoleka Kotashe in Johannesburg.
President Cyril Ramaphosa says the age of the newly appointed National Director of Public Prosecutions is not the main priority, but rather the work that will undertake to transform the NPA is what should be taken into account. Mutibi, now 63, is set to lead the NPA for the next 2 years, which many have asked if it's enough time to turn the entity around.
A lot of work has been done in turning the NPA around. We now need to foster and move forward with the transition period. Yes, he will give us 2.5 years. And we appointed him knowing that very well, particularly because the advisory panel had not given me a candidate. So I needed to appoint someone that I know can take the NPA forward, particularly with his level of experience and the depth of his experience in the prosecutorial field, in the magisterial field, in the management field, and in investigation field. So those are the 4 key areas that I believe are going to stand him in good stead as he takes the NPA forward. So I have full confidence in his ability.
Now, Advocate Mutibi was, of course, not part of the people or the interview panel. He was actually selected outside of that process. But the person who chaired the interviewing panel, Justice Minister Mamluko Kubai, says her ministry supports the president's decision. Kubai says while the law does not permit his term to be extended, he has vast knowledge on how to run the NPA.
I think the first issue was that we were hoping that the panel process would produce a candidate with longer years that can give us for the NPA. And unfortunately, as we've heard with the president indicating, there was no candidate recommended for appointment. And that's why the option, we do support the president and we welcome the appointment of Advocate Mutibi into NPA. That helps us to almost bring quite a number of issues to fore because he's not going to start afresh. He's somebody who is in the justice portfolio under the department as head of SIU, you'd know. So in joint operation or in joint meetings, he would have been part of those understanding some of the issues that needs to be dealt with and in terms of processing what needs to be done. So we are aware of his advanced age, but because we are taking a person within the portfolio, we are advanced. And as the president says that this is a person who doesn't have to learn anything new.
This weekend, South Africa is hosting China and Russia, among other countries, for joint military exercises planned to take place off the coast of the country. This in a week, the United States of America flexed its muscle, capturing the president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, and taking him and his wife to a U.S. court. Now, many South Africans have since expressed their disquiet about the weekend event, as they believe it could just irritate the United States even further. Last year, the United States President Donald Trump accused South Africa of committing genocide against white people and attempted to humiliate President Ramaphosa during a visit there. Trump additionally slapped the country with 30% tariffs. Fear is now mounting that the weekend exercises with Russia and China may just exacerbate the situation. But what are these exercises about? To talk us through what they'll be doing this weekend is Rear Admiral Musa Nkomonde, Chief Director, Maritime Strategy from the SA Navy. A very good evening to you, Admiral. Thank you very much for your time. Take us through, if you will, what you'll be doing this weekend.
Good evening, Vuyo and the listeners at home. Exercise Mosi, also known as Will of Peace, it's a maritime multinational exercise. It started in 2019 between South Africa, Russia, and China. And then we had a second version in 2023. For this year's edition of the exercise, we have South Africa, Russia, China, and also BRICS plus countries. That will include the United Arab Emirates, Singapore, which will be sending observers, Brazil will be sending observers, and Ethiopia. We also have the People's Republic of China sending vessels. The aim of the exercise basically is to promote maritime cooperation at sea. It is about testing interoperability amongst the various navies that will be taking part in the exercise. It will be conducted in the shores of South Africa, the lead nation being China, but the host nation is South Africa. Basically, what we're exploring here is various doctrines used by other countries. As we all know that the doctrine of the SNDF in general is deeply rooted in the Western doctrines like the Royal Navy, Americas and stuff. However, this exercise, exercising with the BRICS plus countries from the East, gives us an opportunity now to explore how they do their tactics at sea, their doctrine and strategy. This will also enhance our operational competence. That is in a nutshell what we're doing from the 9th to the 16th with all the countries that I've stated.
One would imagine it has taken a long time for you to plan for this.
Yes, indeed, the planning takes considerable time. It started in the beginning of the year where the concept was developed, and then we had what we call various planning conferences up until the recent one that was held in November, where the final details of the exercise itself were agreed upon, and we are ready to execute the exercise.
Are you worried at all that the exclusion of other nations outside of BRICS may just lead to other people seeing this differently, especially given the current geopolitical climate?
I must say, Vuyo, that this exercise is unique in its nature because of the participating countries that take place in this exercise. However, we do have maritime exercises with other nations like France. We have exercised Oxide every 2 years. We have exercised Good Hope with the Germans. We've got Atlas with Argentina, Uruguay, and Brazil. We used to have Shared Accord with America. So every region or every bloc has got its opportunity to exercise with the South African armed forces. As we are friendly to all these nations, we've got good and cordial diplomatic relations. So that is how we do these exercises.
Rear Admiral Musa Nkomonde, let me thank you so much for your time. Joining me now is Professor Isaac Kambule, who is a professor of political economy and the director of the Africa Center for Evidence at the University of Johannesburg. Welcome to you too, Prof, and thank you very much for your time. You heard what Rear Admiral Musango Mwonde had to say there about the purpose of this exercise, how long it has taken for them to plan for this event, and how he says it is not exclusive to the BRICS Club, but they conduct these exercises with other countries as well, including France, which he mentioned there. Would that be enough to allay the fears of South Africans who think these exercises at this time, given everything that has happened over the past year, may just irritate the powerful United States of America?
Well, good evening, Vuyo, and thank you so much for the invite. I do not think that this will be enough, because we know that at the heart of what is currently happening now is Donald Trump under the basically trying to pull the US in a direction that says we need to showcase our might, and whoever is in front of us who doesn't want to listen to our proceedings, who doesn't want to take our direction, then we're going to bully them out of the way. And in the South African context, again, I understand that most South African, or many South Africans, again, are worried about all of this, but at the same time, we need to be asking ourselves certain questions as to whether, do we want to be a colony of the US? Do we want to be a country whose national interests will be determined in the US, rather than South Africa also taking up its space in the international political economy or international relations so that it can assert its own interests?
We're dealing here with quite a character in President Donald Trump, who does pretty much what he wants to do, irrespective of what other people may think of his actions. Now, South Africa is in the middle, or is still pursuing a trade deal with the United States of America. We're still unsure as to whether we'll continue to form part of AGOA as well. Whatever anyone may think or say about who we are or who we should be and how we should conduct ourselves, you don't think that we're dealing with a different administration, and perhaps we should tread a little more carefully than perhaps we're doing at the moment?
Definitely dealing with a different administration. And I mean, the moment that Donald Trump came into power, he started accusing South Africa of committing genocide. But I think the one lucky aspect that we have is we do have the European Union on our side. Countries such as Germany, countries such as France have been able to come out and say whatever Donald Trump is saying is basically misinformation. In as much as I think we need to be trading carefully here, I think we must also be asking certain key questions as to how careful can we trade. We know right now that, I mean, the person who's likely to be the new US's ambassador in South Africa has been sworn in, and we know some of his particular views that he's been indicating throughout the media. And the question then becomes, what does South Africa do about that? Is there a particular individual that we want to host in our country who's going to dilute South Africa as it is? Someone who's going to say, South Africa, you must revoke your case against Israel in the ICJ. Does that necessarily make any sense? What happens then? Again, I think this also plays into the arena that we are facing in the South African context as to who is influencing South Africa's foreign policy. Is it the ANC or is it the DA? And the DA has come out and said the ANC is pursuing its own interest through South Africa's foreign policy.
I'm glad you went there. I'm glad you went there, Prof, because you look at the Europeans' response to what Donald Trump's administration has done in the past week by kidnapping, essentially, the president, and you look also at how the UK has actually responded. They've been umming and arming and not really, being forthright as to what their position is. And add to that what the ambassador designate to South Africa has said publicly in the United States that he is going to dissuade South Africa from taking Israel to the ICJ. Both those instances suggest to me that it's not as straightforward as it seems.
It's not, Vuyo. And again, I think there are bound to be many hiccups because we've seen even the issue of Greenland. Denmark has come out strongly in saying this is not going to happen. So what happens then next if the US goes and annexes Greenland from Denmark? What does the entire NATO then stand for? And these are some of the contradictions that are starting to embolden and happen within the EU's relationship with the US. And again, we've reached a particular time where the EU needs to be firm and take a particular stance, because I think for the past 15 years, it has been controlled by the US in terms of all the position that it has been taking. Yes. And now Donald Trump is likely to push the situation even further to a point where it is likely to break the existing relationship between the two.
Well, we'll see how this situation pans out. Professor Kambule, let me thank you very much for your time. And that's how we come to the end of this week in politics, as we, of course, tried to do a bit of stargazing, look at some of the stories that are going to define politics this particular year. Do join us again next week. Goodbye.